Hey guys, welcome back. Thanks for coming back and joining this video. I have dubbed this one and the next one as kind of Beyond Bible Hub because I want to cover some features that we haven't covered yet in Logos that I think really help sell it. I don't just mean that in terms of money, but to be sure that's a huge consideration for most people, right? I mean, if you're talking about spending a lot of money on software, you have to really, really be convinced that you actually need it for what it is you want to do, for what it is that you're trying to accomplish. So the first thing I want to show y'all is the program settings for Logos Desktop. I know, like super boring, right? But there's some cool things to be aware of. So first, you've probably noticed this whole time that my Logos application, my Logos Desktop here, is dark theme. You may go on their website or see some tutorials that show that it's a light theme. Well, this was introduced in Logos 9, finally, after years of users saying, hey, we want a dark mode, right? That's kind of gotten popular. You can dark mode your Windows, you can dark mode your iPhone. I mean, all things have it now. This can be set right from the top right help menu, right here. So system, light, dark. You can control all that from within here. Or you can have it so you can set it to light or dark, have it set to system if you're someone who wants it to stick with the same theme of your Windows PC, like what I'm using. I honestly can't say what that's like on Mac, but nevertheless. So next, you can set how you want Logos to open. So we can go here, let's open program settings. Again, application theme, we can pick out how that we want that to go, if I can talk. At startup open, we drop this down and we see these are different layouts, right? We went over layouts earlier on in the interface video, but there's different layouts that we can have this open to. Me, as I said before, I like the home dashboard, hence all the cards and panels and whatnot. But you can set it to open to any predetermined layout. It's easy to change to. So for example, I have a layout here for Greek syntax that I was using for that class. If I set that as my startup layout, then it will automatically open. If I launch Logos, it will open to those resources in the places that I have it set for that theme. Excuse me, for that layout. So that's cool. Next, we have check spelling while typing. If you're taking notes, if you're writing sermons, this is a big deal. Spell check is spell check though, so there's not much else to say there. A citation style though, this is awesome. This was actually just recently updated to Arabian to the 9th edition, but this is awesome, especially for grad students. So you basically just select what style, right? What style do you want? And then when you copy a reference, it will give you the footnote automatically. So if you paste this into a Word document, it gives you what you've pasted. It adds, a tag for your footnote, and then down at the bottom, it will format the footnote and the full citation for whatever form you've picked. So to Arabian 9th, of course, would be author name, italicized name of work, and so on. Copy citations, yes, because generally that's what this is for, right? You do want it. Resources, if you pick something that is longer than 25 characters. So if you only copied like 4 words, it's not going to paste a citation. But if you copied, well, unless those 4 words had more than 25 characters, but if you copied like a whole paragraph, it's going to include a citation. Hyperlinked copied citations, if you say yes, then let's say you drop these in a note or in a document or in a sermon or something, that means it'll be hyperlinked, and then you can click it and it'll open that resource in a new panel. However, for me, this is usually for writing academic papers or articles or something. And so for me, having a hyperlinked citation doesn't do a whole lot of good because the people that I have to submit this to, such as professors, may or may not be opening any resources in Logos. So I always leave hyperlink copied citations set to no. That way it doesn't copy the hyperlink, and then I have to go into my footnotes after the fact and remove the hyperlink and remove the blue highlight color and all that. So anyway, so there's a lot of different settings in here that are interesting. Play sounds, like the little startup chime, you can turn on or off. I kind of like it. Maybe I'm a nerd. I am a nerd. Information tooltips, you can get a little information pane over here that you can look at. Show store button, you can turn that off if you don't like having the store icon up there. Some of these, I'm not going to go through everything. Some of these are kind of self-explanatory. Some of these maybe you will want for a time, maybe you won't want for long. Accessibility scaling, this is kind of like what percentage do you want it zoomed at. So I actually like content. I like programs set to 100, just normal. But I like content set higher. It zooms in a little bit and the text isn't quite so small. Use internet is necessary if you want things to update automatically. Again, I showed this off the other day, but these are resources in my library, and they will be updated automatically, such as here, automatically start downloads, anytime there is something to synchronize. If you turn that off, either of those. But if you turn it off, then you can still, click the button, download your new resources, synchronize everything, get updates and so on the fly, but it won't do it automatically. Me, I prefer not to have to think about it. So community ratings, community tags, you can rate resources in your library, right? So let's drag the library down and uh, rating. It was already on, my bad. Go over rating. I can rate every individual resource. Now you notice some of these look like they're already rated. Like this is a 3, this is a 2.5, this is a 3.5. Where does this come from? Well, those are community ratings. Basically, as other people that have these same resources rate things and send that information back to Logos, they update the rating of the community rating of a resource in everyone's library. So you can turn that off if you only want your own rating to be shown. Community tags, that's the same sort of thing for resources. When you get into tagging, I didn't cover that, so I'm not really going to say a whole lot. I just like to say that yes, I leave it on. Text display, show red letter in Bibles, yes or no. I'm sure most of you are familiar with red letter Bibles. You can pick different Greek fonts. You can pick different Hebrew fonts. You can pick different Syriac fonts. I assume this will be updated eventually for Coptic and Ethiopic, but there's just not quite as many resources for those yet. You can pick if you want to justify the text of your resource or leave it formatted left justified, right justified, centered, and so on to each individual one. Line spacing, you can increase the line spacing. You can choose what you do on double click. You can choose what you do on triple click. When you go to select a word, do you want to select just the word? Do you want to select an individual character of that word or what have you? And so on. So you can also pick different transliteration formats. You can play with those. You really have to play with them just to see what all they're capable of doing. I couldn't really explain many of the differences to you. I just found that I like the SBL Greek and SBL Academic the best, so I leave them that way. And that's that. One last note on program settings, again, the boring part, is hardware acceleration right here. You're probably better off leaving it off. So I used to use it. I didn't really notice anything working better, except sometimes my library drop down, so this right here, would start flashing, and the whole thing would freeze for like a minute. Nothing was clickable. I could click off and it would go away and I could use other things, but when the next time I click it, it's still flashing. So I actually had to contact Logos support. They said, hey, if you have enable hardware acceleration on, you need to set it to no, turn that off. And I did, and I restarted the application, and it was problem solved. So that's that. Now, the next thing we're going to look at is resource prioritization. I've already sort of talked about this before when we talked about preferred Bible translation. I talked about it in terms of how to organize commentaries. But you see, prefer these resources. So again, you get this under library, little pop-up menu here, prioritize resources. So that's what it brings this panel here up. Now, I have a whole bunch of resources. I have a whole bunch prioritized even, and that's not even that much. Now, what you want to do is you want to start with this. You want to pick 2 or 3 of your top Bible translations. For me, that's the NASB 2020 and the TLV, as you've probably noticed. And you want to set those at the top. So whatever is top, your your preferred Bible. You want to put those at the top because you will be using those, most likely, you'll be using those more than anything else, unless you're like a pro of Hebrew and Greek. Maybe you don't care about English translations anymore. But for most people, even those of us that can read the original languages, this is mostly what you're going to be working in and dealing with. So pick a couple Bible translations, put them at the top. Next, you want whatever your Hebrew and Greek lexicons are. For me, that is, as I mentioned, the Halot, the Hebrew and Aramaic lexicon of the Old Testament. It's also BDAG, my Greek English lexicon. This could be where you put fires if you prefer that, or the BDB if you prefer that, or if that's all you have. So you prioritize those next. I actually need to change this, so it's a good time to come in. So recently, no. Oh, no, that's what it is. So NID, yeah, O. So this right here, the New International Dictionary of Old Testament Theology and Exegesis. I actually now want to prefer that above the TDNT, the Theological Dictionary of the New Testament. Well, actually be the TDOT, which I must have missed somewhere. So we're going to drag this in. but we're going to put it under this one because this is newer and I've actually taken to it. Pretty soon I will be acquiring the New International Dictionary of New Testament Theology and Exegesis, and that will actually go above the TDNT. But either way, you just do that, right? You just pick one, you drag it where you want it to go, and that sets the priority for that resource. So after you've got your Hebrew and Greek lexicons, you'll see down here I've got a couple of systematic theologies. These things I've really not hardly done much with. A couple of dictionaries here, encyclopedias, that sort of thing. You'll want to prioritize those, whichever ones are your favorite. You'll want to prioritize your top commentary sets, again, just because if you're like me, you will end up coming in here quite frequently. So I always set these as my top ones. The Word, of course, is my number one top preferred commentary, at least for now. I promise you I did not drag all 61 volumes, right? So when you drag one thing over, it takes that whole series. Now what this means is, let's say that I'm looking for something in the Word Biblical Commentary while I'm linked up and studying along in the book of Matthew. So I'll have the Matthew commentary. Well, then let's say I jump over to John and I want to get a commentary. Well, the first thing it's going to do is it's going to open the Word Biblical Commentary to John. So it's a different volume by a different author, but it's still the same series, right? Because that's still my top priority, my highest priority commentary. Let's say that I'm looking for First Peter and that I don't have a Word Biblical Commentary volume for Peter. I do, but let's say that I don't. Then it would by default go to the next set, which in my case is the New International Commentary series, and it would give me that volume. That would be my highest priority if I didn't have anything in this series. So make whatever resources you reference often in terms of commentary series, in terms of dictionaries, lexicons, encyclopedias, and especially your top referenced Bibles, make sure all of those are in this list. If they're in this list, they will always be prioritized above things that are not in the list at all. If there are multiple in the list, they will be prioritized in the order that they appear here in the list. Now, I myself have taken multiple Logos training courses, such as the site that I've linked in the description, Morris Proctor, which I believe to be the absolute best Logos training you can take. Get you an annual subscription, you'll be like, wow, this seems expensive for video courses. It's worth it. If you're investing in Logos and if you really want to become a power user, you got to get trained on it. You got to be shown how to use these features. There's so many things that you don't even know it's capable of. But anyway, so one of the first things that they will have you do in any Logos training series is to prioritize your resources. And you'll find that as time goes on, you'll rearrange them, right? I mean, I've been at this for quite some time. I just added another one, right? I just rearranged some of these. Actually, I need to. So still, I'm working on it based on my own usage and how my usage of the product develops and grows. So maybe one day you find out that you got a new Bible translation, you got a new commentary series, maybe now you prefer the Baker Encyclopedia over the New International, whatever it is, you can reprioritize these at any time to make Logos serve you better. That's really what the prioritization is for. So next up is the Exegetical Guide. Now I mentioned it earlier, but I didn't open it. So here we have the Exegetical Guide, as you can tell, and we're going to open a passage. Right, so we're going to open the most recent passage that I was using this for was Exodus 3:4. Right away, you can see that this section here is called textual variants. Now, a textual variant is going to be something that varies by manuscript, if you weren't already aware. So that's why you have different editions, the Lexham Hebrew Bible, the Dead Sea Scrolls, transcripts from one of the Dead Sea Scrolls, ancient versions. So we have the Septuagint, the Clementine Vulgate, that's the Latin, Targum Onkelos, that's Aramaic, right? So these are different variants that contain results for the passage in question. For us right here, this is Exodus 3:4. So there's transcripts, again, ancient versions. This is really, really cool. Me personally, I love to survey the ancient versions. I love to look at different textual variants to see, where are places where maybe Jerome's Latin Vulgate agrees with the Hebrew Masoretic text, but it disagrees with the Septuagint and the Dead Sea Scrolls. How did that happen? What text did Jerome have? Right? These are some fascinating questions to me. But anyways, so scrolling down, we're going to get a list of words, again, based on the Hebrew of Exodus 3:4, in order that the Hebrew words appear. So here we have Vayera, the name of God. Normally I would say Adonai. We continue on, and we could do this. This is almost like a reverse interlinear as we looked at before, except it's prioritized based on Hebrew. So I guess really it would be just a regular interlinear. But it is linked up to the NASB. So we get the word itself, we get a transliteration of it, and here it's going to break it down. It's going to say, oh, let's say verb. It's a call verb. It's a Vav consecutive plus the imperfect, third person, masculine, singular, and so on. It's going to give me here the word, like, hey, what does it mean? It's going to give me the sense. It means to see, to perceive by sight, right? So again, pay attention to that Bible sense. It's going to help you understand how that word is used in this context, or at least it's going to point you, generally, it's going to point you in the right direction. So we see each word successively in this passage. Again, I can click this to open the nidati entry, to open the t-dot entry, the halot entry, and so on. But as we continue to scroll down, getting past the rest of the words in this verse, it's going to give me a grammatical constructs section, right? This is going to list different places that we see a significant Hebrew term that appears in this passage. So for example, in this passage, we have Moses, Moses, right? A verbless clause. We have the reference hine, right? Or really it's hineni, here am I. Those are some significant things. So we keep scrolling down further. We get to important words. These are words that are big words, right? That stand out. Elohim, obviously, it appears many, 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 many times in the Hebrew Bible, thousands of times. So it gives us, again, the name of God occurs almost 7,000 times. So it gives us this, kind of quick at a glance breakdown. But these are important or sort of key words, if I can use that term, that stand out. Scrolling down a little bit more, we can see the lemmas in the passage. Again, the lemma is the lexical form of the word. Get some prepositions in there and everything too. Scrolling down here, we get to some important passages. Now, this is really interesting when you're studying something and you start digging into similar themes, similar motifs found in Scripture. So we can see how many different times here in these, quote, important passages, the different things happen. For example, it gives us an important passage of Genesis 22:11, right? And one of the things that's going to show us is how it says, the angel of the Lord called to him from heaven and said, Abraham, Abraham, and he said, here I am. Well, see, that's fascinating because in this passage in Exodus 3:4, right, it says, when the Lord saw that he turned and looked aside, God called to him from the midst of the bush and said, Moses, Moses, and he said, here I am, right? The same sort of interaction. He called out his name twice, and the response was Hineni, right? Here I am. Yeah, that's fascinating, right? We see the same thing in Genesis 46. It happened with Jacob, 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 and he said, Hineni. Um, a similar sort of thing here in 1 Samuel. The Lord called and he said, Hineni. In verse 10, Samuel, Samuel. Um, so that's interesting, right? Is it significant? Well, that's for your own personal study. But the point is that there are some cool things to check out, some cool things to study. The next section, and I love this one, is ancient literature. So right here, context of scripture document. Right here is Origen's homilies on the Gospel of Luke. These are ancient sources that relate to the passage that we're reading, or maybe they themselves refer to it. So here we can go to Jubilees 48:2, which is a reference to Moses and the theophany at the burning bush. We can go to the works of Philo and Josephus. Um, so different pseudepigraphal works, extra biblical works. Again, if you're interested in intertextuality, if you're interested in kind of cultural studies, this is a great way to get started as the exegetical guide. If we keep scrolling down, we will see commentaries, and these commentaries are very similar to how it is in the passage guide. They're going to be commentaries that relate to this passage. We can sort them by priority, we can view them by era, etc. Journals, again, we've kind of already covered that in the passage guide. It's just going to be journal articles that have something to say, and they are tagged as relating to this passage in question of Exodus 3:4. Below all of this, we have some exegesis, some grammars. So biblical Hebrew for beginners. That's a Hebrew grammar in my library. It's going to link us here because this is one of the example passages in that book. So we can go and read more about the grammar of it, or hear Greek grammar of, or excuse me, grammar of Septuagint Greek if I wanted to see this reference in the Septuagint. So that's pretty much the end of the exegetical guide. I really just wanted to show you guys how powerful this is. And what makes it different from the passage guide? It is super useful. It is super powerful. One more thing to mention, because I don't know if I've mentioned it already, but it is possible to add and remove different sections from your exegetical guide. So you can come in here And let's say you want to add or remove courses, add or remove concordance options, add or remove the bookstore, and so on. You can select these from this little add drop down here to add other sections like these. Okay, so next up we have the counseling guide. And if that sounds odd to you, that's fair. It kind of is. But it's a great resource for pastors where you get the sort of information that you need kind of at a glance if you're counseling someone or someone comes to you in a time of crisis. This is not something that, if you're a person that's just looking to do Bible study, you're really going to make much use of. But again, for pastors and people in positions of leadership especially, it is useful. So I'm going to go through a really quick overview of it here. Now, generally speaking, when you open the counseling guide, the first thing you're going to do is search for a topic. So anxiety was one that I was looking into. So just click search and boom, it brings us the counseling guide topic of anxiety. Now, it could be a different topic. It could be stress. It could be fear, whatever it is that people are really dealing with, whatever they're struggling with, they've come to you for counseling for. So anxiety here, it gives us an entry from the quick reference guide to biblical counseling, personal and emotional issues. This is going to be one of the key resources that a lot of this stuff is going to come from because it's thrown in with a lot of the, it's either silver or gold, I think it's gold and up, Logos base packages. And this is kind of one resource that powers a lot of the material in the counseling guide. It's got some stuff combined as far as biblical counseling, scriptural passages, but also an understanding of psychology and what people are going through when they're dealing with anxiety or stress or eating disorders or those sorts of things. So if we scroll down, we come to a list of related topics. We have claustrophobia, fear, stress. So perhaps someone comes in and they say that they're dealing with anxiety, but really it's fear that they're fighting. So you can open other topics. So if we picked fear, it would open another counseling guide to fear. Okay. Additionally, under the More header, we have links here to concepts that if we click anxiety the concept, it opens up the fact book. Again, the fact book has become huge. Now, this will take you to more resources. It will give you more dictionary entries. It will give you biblical passages and so on. It's great for studying the concept of anxiety. Like, what is anxiety? How is anxiety featured in Scripture? Those sorts of things. But that's more for studying the topic, right? It's not really answering the question of what do I say to someone and how do I counsel someone that's dealing with this topic. So in this case, anxiety. So over here below that, we have some passages. We have Proverbs 12:25, anxiety in a person's heart weighs it down, but a good word makes it glad. Another proverb, we have, of course, the famous passages from Matthew 6 and Philippians 4. Those are good passages to remind someone. It's good for people to remember to pray these things and to recite them often, I would say. But I would also have to advise you really quick, don't just feed a person dealing with anxiety Bible verses about anxiety. Right? Don't just tell them, don't be anxious anymore. Here's a solution to your problem. If it were that simple, chances are they wouldn't still be struggling with it and they wouldn't be coming to you for help. Okay. Now below that we have a couple of dictionaries. Now these are, you'll notice there's only two here, right? I mean, normally I have tons of dictionaries. Well, it's because these are specifically tuned towards counseling, towards, psychological help, towards, the types of things that somebody coming in, if you're launching the counseling guide, chances are you're needing to counsel someone who's dealing with something psychologically or spiritually. You don't just need to give them a definition of anxiety, right? So here we have the Baker Encyclopedia of Psychology and Counseling and the Practical Encyclopedia of Christian Counseling. Continuing down, we have journals. Again, these are specifically journals dealing with the counseling side of more of a pastoral sense of counseling people, again, related to the topic, which at hand is anxiety. Monographs, this is going to be books that are keyed and tagged for counseling, specifically address this issue. If you're unaware of the word, a monograph is just sort of a scholarly book that isn't necessarily a commentary, and it may or may not be part of a series, but usually it's just kind of a standalone work. You would normally call that a monograph. So continuing to scroll down, we come to web resources. We have articles, audio, video, we have books. If you click one, it's going to open in your browser. It's going to take you to something that's generally considered a trusted resource for Christian counseling. Once again, once again, you'll notice that these are pretty much all from the Christian Counseling Educational Foundation. They've created a lot of free resources, Family Life Today, American Association of Christian Counselors, and so on. So these are curated specifically for the topic, for specifically for the purpose, I should say, of counseling someone going through this. Once again, we come to the section of books from my library, Biblical Counseling Keys on Worry. That's just included in the package that I got that came with the counseling guide. I don't have a whole lot of books in my library that deal with anxiety from a counseling perspective. So again, I may have multiple resources that deal with scriptures about anxiety or the topic of anxiety, but not for the purpose of counseling. So I want to just make that clear. There's not a whole lot of resources available for the counseling guide, but I'm hoping that that's something that Faith Life and Logos will make more available of in the future. I do think that's something that is lacking. Okay, so let's close all these, and next up we have the Sermon Builder. So this one will be kind of brief. I just wanted to cover the sermon, so we go to Docs, no, Docs, New Sermon. Okay. For me, I'm a pastor, right? I have to prepare a teaching every Sabbath, for every Sabbath, I should say. If you were also doing so, or even if you teach from time to time and you would like a good resource here, you'll find this tool very useful. If all you want to do is study and read and research, but not type out any sort of formal documents or anything, you probably won't care about this part as much. But the Sermon Builder, right, under Documents, you can open a new sermon. So you give it a title. So, my new sermon. You have headings for first point I will make. And then you have normal text. So this is the first point that I will make today. Right? And this becomes your transcript. For me, this is my script. I write out my entire sermon, 5,000-ish some odd words in here because I don't want to miss a point or something. I don't like the prospect of possibly forgetting something that I had intended to say ahead of time. So I type out my whole entire sermon teaching transcript every week before teaching. But however you do it, you can use the sermon builder for that. You can use it just to create sort of a bulleted list of points. You can use it just to basically fill in your passages and then give yourself a little prompt to go through. One of the nicest things is that you can insert references to scripture on the fly. So let's say that I wanted Galatians 5:22 to 23. Boom, there it is. I don't have to copy it. I don't have to paste it. I just type the reference, hit enter, and it's right there. I can even select the version and change what version is displayed. So I can go from the NASB to the TLV. I can go from the Tree of Life to the New Revised Standard. Right, so I can pick any version just by clicking that version, and now it changes this in my notes. It's also worth noting that if you present this, whether you use PowerPoint or ProPresenter or whatever, you can create slides for your sermon at the same time as you're creating the text transcript. For me, this is a huge time saver. We also, at our congregation, we use Faith Life's product called Proclaim. So I can publish to Proclaim, which I'll cover in the 10th video, I think. So Proclaim, I will cover here a little bit shortly. But again, for me, huge time saver. So I've got a normal sentence here. I've got, a heading and so on. Let's say that this is now my second point, which I will state emphatically with the assistance of a slide. Okay, so let's say that I want to make this text here a slide. I highlight it. This little pop-up comes up. This here, add slides from selected text, and boom. Now this is a slide. You can right-click it, you can delete it. I could also take this text and make it a heading, which will automatically create a slide for it because it's a heading type of text. Now, if you have Logos on your mobile app, if you have the Logos mobile app, I should say, on your phone, on your tablet, you can go into preach mode, which will actually bring up your finalized sermon document once it's been published. You can edit it from an iPad. You can't edit them on a phone, but you can on a tablet. So you can also preach it, which brings up this long scrollable or swipeable format you can pick if you want to scroll through it, such as scrolling up and down, or if you want to just swipe from one page to another, and you can use that to preach from. There's more that can be done with this. You can go in and edit slides, edit what they say. You can edit the reference on it. You can add a subheader if it's a heading slide. You can change the background format and all that. I'm not going to get into all that right now, especially because so many people don't use it, but for those that are going to be teaching, that are pastors, it is huge, and once again, it's a huge time saver. So the next list of our features that I want to cover, and we're almost done here, we come to what Logos calls mobile ed courses, right? So I'm going to search for mobile ed courses. So let's get rid of that pane. So right here, these are mobile ed or mobile education courses. So I'm going to open uh, this one from Dr. Ben Witherington, and I'll open that, and we'll open this. Okay, now this is really cool. So a mobile ed course is sort of like a video course that you might see online, whether it's from masterclass or seminary or something like that. They typically include video lectures, like what you can see right here. They include a textbook, which is this, and oftentimes a workbook and usually even an audio book of the textbook. I'm not going to play that right now, but there is an audio book of it as well. So in short, they're like seminary level courses on whatever the topic may be. It could be a book study on the book of Ezekiel. It could be a topic study on baptism. It could be teaching you how to use Logos for Hebrew and Greek study. So it's those sorts of things. But usually what you do is you watch the lecture and you read along in the textbook, and oftentimes there is a workbook to go through as well. So as you can see, I have the video here. There's a workbook down here, and here's the textbook that goes with it. The textbook is largely everything covered in the video, but some people want to go back or make clippings, highlights, notes, that sort of thing. Now, the workbooks are not just another textbook. The workbooks contain links to the fact book. So, for example, in segment 1, you talk about John, the son of Zebedee. You talk about the Gospel of John, the Epistles of John, the book of Revelation. We talk about wisdom literature, all of that. Clicking this will take me to the fact book entry on this specific thing. So, for example, John, the son of Zebedee, gives me a whole bunch of information about him. And I can scroll through. I can see Greek. I can see events that are tied to his life. I can see relatives of his. I mean, all kinds of stuff just in the fact book. So again, it links to that. You can do a lot more digging, a lot more researching. But the workbook also contains question and answer portions. So for example, what is one thing you've learned from exploring the guides and tools? That's usually something they'll ask you early on. So from reading through this, what's something that you learned that you didn't know? What insights and observations have you gained? What have you been hoping to learn, or what are you hoping to learn from this course? Providing answers like these actually help us retain information better. So you fill these in, you fill in these sections. It's sort of like an activity book, this workbook, to help make sure that you're actually retaining the information and that you can get everything out of it. Now, as with so many other things that you find in Logos, these too can cause a bit of sticker shock. There are courses that are over $600 or $700 a piece. There are some that are only 20 bucks, 30 bucks, 60 bucks, right? If you purchase a Logos base package for the first time of silver or higher, you should get a discount code with it to get a Logos mobile ed course for free, pretty much of your choosing. There are a couple that are not part of that deal, but for the most part, there's quite a few different courses that are available. In years past, when new editions have come out, new editions of Logos, I should say, such as when 2020, in 2020 when Logos 9 came out, they've offered special deals where right after your first initial upgrade, you not only got your free course that came with it, but you could get 2 more courses for $99. Again, 100 bucks for a couple videos, right? That may sound expensive, but it is much more than that. You need to think of this as a seminary level course on whatever the chosen topic or book or what have you is. Plus, you own these. They're in your library. They can forever be referenced by you. You can go back and retake them. And they're much more affordable than a $1,500, $2,500, $3,500 seminary class if you just wanted to study the information. Obviously, these aren't going to give you credit towards a degree, but if you just wanted to learn more about wisdom literature, about Johannine literature, right? It's John, 1 John, 2 John, 3 John, and Revelation, and how it relates to wisdom literature. I mean, this course, for example, is a great introduction to that study. I have a handful of Logos mobile ed courses. I'm kind of picky about the professors and scholars that I buy from, but I do love them. Many of them, such as this one here that we're looking at, also include an audio form of the textbook that I mentioned. So you can actually listen to the audio being read as you're reading the textbook. You could also use the Logos mobile app to listen to the audiobook even if you're jogging, if you're in the car driving, if you're mowing the lawn, whatever it is. Personally, I find that super helpful. All right, so the last topic that I want to point out here concerning additional features for new Logos users is something that I'm somewhat hesitant to point out. It's under Tools, and that is personal books. Now, personal book is defined basically as just a Word doc that you can upload into your Logos desktop library. This could be academic papers that you've worked on. This could be external sermons that you've written, maybe in Word or something. This could be doctoral research that you're doing. Whatever it is that's in a Word doc format, you can upload to Logos, to your library on desktop as a personal book resource. These are searchable, right? They will show up in some of your guides and some of your search results as you're searching through your library. But here's the catch. Personal books are only viewable on the computer on which they were uploaded. They reside physically on the hard drive. They do not get backed up to the cloud. They do not get synced with your Faith Life account. And it means that you will not be able to read or access your personal books on the Logos web app or the Logos mobile app. Okay. Now, there's some reasons for these restrictions if that sounds a bit unfair. Part of that is people have taken their Kindle books or other ebooks that they've purchased from other sources and ripped those files to a PDF and then converted them to Word, and there they directly upload them into Logos. And naturally, if I could get if I could get a book on sale for $1.99 for Kindle, why would I buy it for $12.99 in Logos, right? That's sort of people's thinking. So this is a sort of unofficial sort of thing. They don't want you doing this. You're not supposed to do this. It's sort of even a gray area as to whether or not you can legally do this because of copyrights and digital licensing. But I just want you to understand the limitations for personal books is not because Faith Life doesn't like you to have access to your own Word documents on all your devices. Right? It's not that. It's more because they're trying to keep people from abusing licensing agreements and possibly even committing a digital crime. So if you want to add personal books, again, you find them under the Tools menu. You go there, you click the Add Book button. It'll let you upload a file and so on. But for me, that wraps up this part. My hope was just to kind of walk you through some of the main features that I think will best serve you in using Logos. In particular, if you're not familiar with it as of yet, but even if maybe you've just started or maybe you're using a basic or free or fundamentals version and you want to learn a little bit more, whatever the case may be, once again, thanks for checking out this series. Please do continue at least through the very next video, as that will cover what I think is some very important advice before you purchase anything. So do be sure to like, subscribe, check the description for the links and all that. I will see you next time, and for now, shalom.